NOPD's Violent Offender Squad, along with the U.S. Marshals, apprehended 44-year-old Henry Talley Jr. for the shooting death of 28-year-old Asia Davis.
The suspect is behind bars, accused of killing a woman on the I-10 service road. Police say 48-year-old Henry Talley Jr. shot and killed 28-year-old Asia Davis last Thursday. Police were called to Mayo Boulevard and found her body in the middle of the road.
Then talked directly to families who were impacted by violence of last week, and particularly women in our community. Speaking to them and apologizing, quite frankly, for how my words or my messaging seem to be misconstrued.
Well, 12 hours, that's how long dispatch records show it took New Orleans police to respond to a woman who was calling for help from a man allegedly abusing her. Good evening, everyone. I'm Cherise Gibson.
And I'm Devin Bartolotta. Asia Davis was eventually killed by that man, investigators say. And now the city council wants to know why police took so long to get to her. Eleanor Tabone has the story.
Asia Davis is one of 6 women killed in New Orleans in the span of a month. According to dispatch records, the young mother called for help, but seemingly authorities failed her.
This woman reached out twice to the New Orleans Police Department through 911 and made complaints fearing for her life.
Kenya Davis is still grieving the loss of her 28-year-old daughter, Asia Davis.
She was my child. She was my daughter.
She was apparently killed by her boyfriend, Henry Talley Jr. Our partners at NOLA.com say he shot her, then ran over her.
We barely holding on.
Twice before her death, she called 911 for help. But dispatch records show on both April 6th and April 18th, her calls were downgraded. In both occasions, it took NOPD 12 hours to respond, and both calls were marked gone on arrival. NOPD says those calls were downgraded because the suspect had left the scene and there was no threat of imminent danger. Council President JP Morrell wants to know why a domestic violence complaint is not a priority.
It is hard for us as a city to have victims and survivors take us seriously. We don't prioritize their safety by thinking a 12-hour response on 2 complaints of domestic violence is acceptable.
Just what we see in this case regarding Miss Davis. Well, she's dead now. She's dead.
Domestic violence advocate Kim Sport says there's no excuse for why it took officers that long to get to Asia.
There's a reason why we have laws that distinguish simple battery from domestic abuse battery, and that's because of the threat of imminent harm to a victim of domestic abuse.
Some New Orleans City Council members question whether a mother's death could have been prevented if police had responded faster to her calls for help. Good evening, I'm Lee Zurich.
And I'm Meg Gatto. Council members vow to get to the bottom of a series of events leading up to Asia Davis's killing in New Orleans East.
As Rob Masson reports, council members are concerned about slow police response times, which may have resulted in a parolee now accused of murder to go free.
It's been 2 weeks since 28-year-old Asia Davis, a mother and nurse's assistant, was found shot to death on Mayo Boulevard. City council members want answers.
In this state of Louisiana, there is a 1-to-1 ratio that if you are a victim of domestic violence, if you are someone and they do not get to you and they do not intervene, you go from being a survivor to a deceased victim.
Council members say that Davis attempted to report alleged abuse at the hands of 44-year-old Henry Talley Jr., but it took police 12 hours to respond.
You had 2 complaints from a victim, I guess a deceased, so not a survivor anymore, of domestic violence, and these were complaints that were downgraded, which is why they had 12-hour responses.
Talley, who had been convicted of murder in the 1996 killing of a 12-year-old boy and sentenced to life in prison, was allowed to go free 2 years ago after serving 25 years, thanks to a Supreme Court decision on life sentences given to juveniles.
The cops are running from call to call to call and are paddling upstream without a paddle the entire time.
New Orleans council members are also concerned that Orleans judges don't seem to be holding Gwen's Law hearings at the same rate of neighboring parishes. Those hearings are designed to make it harder for domestic abusers to bond out of jail.
Is that in Jefferson Parish, they roughly hold 150 Gwen's Law hearings every month. That's on average. On a high number, it's about 180, 150. Here in Orleans Parish, we hold about 15 a month.
Police Association attorney and former police officer Eric Hessler says domestic violence complaints were a higher priority back when the department had more officers.
Normally, your rank would call you and call his units that were out on the scene and ask them to either wrap that scene up and go handle the code 2 or order them to do so.
Council members say it's all part of a problem that's feeding an environment where domestic abusers aren't being adequately punished, fueling violence against women, which can often turn deadly. Council members say they'll keep asking questions until they find solutions needed to hopefully save lives. And the New Orleans Police Department says it is looking into the slow response times in the Asia Davis case. Rafael Goyeneche with the Metropolitan Crime Commission says if police had arrested Talley after the domestic abuse calls were first made, he would have been locked up immediately for a parole violation. And Asia Davis may still be alive.
And I've even talked directly to families who were impacted by violence of last week, and particularly women in our community. Speaking to them and apologizing, quite frankly, for how my words or my messaging seem to be misconstrued.
Today, Mayor LaToya Cantrell is apologizing for comments where she said women play a role in the violence in our city, and she stressed the killings were not random. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for watching. I'm Katie Moore. Sharice is on assignment tonight. We have been in touch with some of those families from the violence last week, and the ones we spoke with say they haven't heard from the mayor, certainly not an apology. The Mayor Cantrell's statement comes a few days after she said women are also involved in criminal activity and said the Rance shootings were not random. Alyssa Curtis has been following this controversy for us. She's joining us live tonight with the latest. Alyssa, what else did the mayor have to say?
Yeah, Katie, the mayor seemed upset that her words would ever hurt a grieving family. Like you guys just heard, she said that she has reached out directly to some of those families of victims and has since apologized. We've reached out to 2 families who lost young women, and what would have been the time frame of what Mayor Cantrell was saying last week and the time frame of which she was referring to. Asia Davis's family and Jediamond Jones's family have both told us that they have not heard from the mayor.
None of these acts are random at all. And what we have to understand that women also play a role in violent activity in our city.
Those were Mayor Cantrell's comments hours after 3 women had been shot and killed in New Orleans in 2 separate incidents. 5 days later, she backtracked.
From my heart to you all, and I'm a woman, I'm a black woman and a part of this community as well, and have a child as well. That's a woman, so forgive me.
28-year-old Asia Davis was gunned down Thursday, May 11th at the intersection of Mayo Boulevard and the I-10 service road. Jediamond Jones and Imani Williams, both 20, were killed outside a hookah lounge on North Claiborne early Friday morning. In the midst of grieving, the young women's families had to hear the mayor's comments. Comments Davis's family told WWL-TV were not warranted. Cantrell says she apologized directly to victims' family members. According to the mayor, they forgave her.
I was able to have the healthy dialogue, and then having been told that I was forgiven, it's power in that on both sides. For the family, with me respecting and having a better understanding and appreciation for them and their family and their loved ones, but also the exchange for them respecting my point of view as well.
But at least 2 of the victims' families have not spoken with the mayor. Davis's family says there has been no call whatsoever. Jones's father tells me he nor Jones's mother has spoken with the mayor, but says, quote, if she wants to speak to me, she can have my number. While Cantrell stood firm in her apology, she also stood firm in some of her previous comments. She says she should not have lumped all incidents together, but says women have been involved in crime.
As I talk about from the investigative standpoint, that we're just seeing again. Young women are increasingly associating themselves with people that are involved in illegal or criminal activity.
Which incident specifically, she wouldn't say.
Now, we asked the mayor's office which families she spoke to specifically in hopes to get more clarification. They told us they did not want to go into specifics. We want to mention this is not the first time the mayor has been accused of being insensitive towards victims of crimes. Last year, she was seen sitting in court on the side of the suspect, of an armed robbery suspect, and seemingly ignoring the crime victim.